I received that text on a Tuesday evening. We no longer trust you. Consider yourself no longer part of this family. The words from my mother, Jenna, shattered 2 decades of what I thought was an unbreakable bond. Just 3 weeks earlier, my grandfather had left me $1.2 million in his will, while my parents and siblings each received $50,000. My fingers trembled as I typed my simple response. Understood. I had no idea that my calm reaction would set off a chain of events that would change everything. Before I reveal how I turned this heartbreaking rejection into the most liberating moment of my life, tell me where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button. The legal showdown that follows changed everything. Family was everything to me growing up in our modest suburban Chicago neighborhood. As the middle child of 3, I always felt a special connection to my grandfather. A retired financial advisor who had built his wealth through careful investments and wise money management. He took me under his wing when I was just 13, teaching me the value of saving, investing, and thinking long-term. Money is just a tool, he would tell me as we sat in his study surrounded by financial books and market reports. It is how you use that tool that defines your character. I followed in his footsteps, becoming a financial advisor myself, at 32 building a successful practice, helping families secure their futures. Meanwhile, my parents, Jenna and Thomas, never quite grasped the financial principles my grandfather tried to share with the entire family. They lived paycheck to paycheck despite making good money, constantly refinancing their home to pay off credit card debt that would inevitably accumulate again. My siblings, Aaron and Sophie, unfortunately adopted the same spending habits. Aaron, 3 years older, cycled through jobs and relationships, always needing temporary loans that were never repaid. Sophie, 5 years younger, maintained a lifestyle on social media that her administrative assistant salary could never actually support. For years, I tried to help them all. I offered to create budgets, set up savings plans, and even volunteered to pay for family financial counseling. We do not need your lectures, my mother Jenna would say, somehow both dismissive and wounded at the same time. Not everyone needs to pinch pennies to be happy. My grandfather watched all this with growing concern. During our Sunday coffee meetings, he would sigh when I updated him on my latest failed attempt to help them prepare for retirement or build emergency savings. You cannot help those who refuse to see, he would say, though he never stopped trying either. When he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 2 years ago, the prognosis gave him only months. The family rallied around him, visiting regularly, bringing meals, and showing the unity I had always hoped to see. During those difficult months, I noticed my parents and siblings suddenly asking him financial questions, showing interest in his investments and mentioning their own financial struggles more frequently. One afternoon, about 3 weeks before he passed, my grandfather asked me to stay after the others had left. His once robust frame had diminished, but his eyes remained sharp as ever. I have made some decisions about my estate, he said, his voice weaker but resolute. Not everyone will understand, but I need to know you will stand firm. I squeezed his hand, unsure what he meant, but promising I would honor his wishes. He smiled and changed the subject, asking about my recent trip to the Financial Advisors Conference in Boston. After the funeral, which brought together extended family from across the country, we maintained the appearance of a united front. The Thanksgiving gathering just 2 weeks later seemed almost normal, with Mother Jenna making her traditional turkey, Aaron bringing his newest girlfriend, and Sophie documenting everything for her social media followers. I brought 3 pumpkin pies from my grandfather's favorite bakery, a tradition he had started decades ago. To Grandpa, I said, raising my glass during dinner. Everyone joined the toast with teary eyes and genuine emotion. That night, I stayed up late talking with my father on the back porch about grandfather's influence on our lives. He seemed reflective, even acknowledging some financial missteps over the years. Maybe it is time I took some of that advice seriously, he said, and I felt a surge of hope that perhaps grandfather's passing might inspire positive change. I had no idea how quickly that hope would evaporate. The reading of the will came 1 month after the funeral. We gathered in the offices of Martin Harlow, my grandfather's attorney for over 30 years. Martin was a serious man with silver hair and reading glasses that sat on the tip of his nose. The office smelled of leather and paper, with grandfather's favorite landscape painting hanging behind Martin's substantial desk. Mother Jenna wore black, though the funeral had long passed, and held my father's hand tightly. Aaron checked his phone repeatedly, until Martin cleared his throat to begin. Sophie sat perfectly poised, as though her followers might somehow be watching this private moment. The first few items were sentimental family heirlooms divided among all of us. Then came the financial distributions, which Martin saved for last. To my daughter Jenna and her husband Thomas, the first we $50,000. I noticed my mother's slight smile falter. To my grandchildren Aaron and Sophie, $50,000 each. Aaron stopped checking his phone. Sophie stopped maintaining her perfect posture. And to my grandson Martin continued looking directly at me. I leave the remainder of my estate valued at approximately $1.2 million with the following instructions. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees instantly. I felt every eye boring into me, as Martin explained that grandfather had set up a trust with me as both beneficiary and trustee, with specific guidelines about investments and charitable giving that aligned with his values. The drive home was silent. My mother declined my offer to discuss the will over dinner, saying she had suddenly developed a migraine. Aaron left without saying goodbye, and Sophie refused to make eye contact. The next evening, Mother Jenna organized an impromptu family dinner, insisting everyone attend. I arrived with a folder of financial planning ideas for their inheritances, hoping to demonstrate my commitment to helping everyone despite the disparity. The atmosphere was frigid from the moment I walked in. My mother served spaghetti, usually a family favorite, but tonight it might as well have been cardboard for all the joy present at the table. So my mother finally said, twirling pasta around her fork without eating it, "You must feel very proud of yourself." "What do you mean?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Oh, please," Aaron jumped in. "Like you did not know this was coming. All those private meetings with Grandpa. All those financial talks that somehow the rest of us were never invited to join." "That is not true," I protested. "Grandpa tried to include everyone in financial discussions for years. He offered to teach all of us." Sophie laughed sharply. "Right. And somehow you ended up with everything. That must have been some amazing financial advice you gave him." "I did not know about the will," I said, firmly, feeling my chest tighten. "And I did not get everything. You all received inheritances too." 50,000 compared to over 1,000,000, my father said, speaking for the first time. "Your mother and I raised you. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us." The dinner deteriorated from there. I tried explaining grandfather's philosophy about financial responsibility, attempted to show them the planning folder I had brought, even offered to help them invest their inheritances to grow them over time. Every suggestion was met with scorn. Over the next 3 weeks, the situation worsened. My calls went unanswered. When family did communicate, it was through increasingly hostile text messages. "Sophie needs a new car. Since you are so wealthy now, you should buy it for her." This from my mother, ignoring the fact that Sophie had just purchased a new car 8 months ago. "My rent is late, and they are threatening eviction. Need 6,000 by tomorrow." Aaron's text came at midnight, though I knew his rent was only 2,000, and he had received his inheritance funds already. I offered alternatives to cash handouts. I suggested financial counseling offered to pay bills directly rather than giving cash, and proposed setting up educational funds for future needs. Each suggestion was treated as further evidence of my betrayal. The final confrontation came when my father called, his voice tight, with controlled anger. "Your mother and I have discussed this. We raised you. We paid for your education. That money is rightfully ours. If you do not agree to split it equally among the family, we will contest the will." I was stunned. Grandpa was of sound mind. He made his decisions carefully. "Contesting will only waste money on legal fees that no one can afford." "That is your choice, then," he said before hanging up. 2 days later, I overheard my name while having lunch at a cafe near my parents' home. At a corner table sat my mother, father, Aaron, Sophie, and cousin Brendan, who happened to be a probate attorney. They were discussing grounds for challenging the will, with my mother insisting I had manipulated my grandfather during his illness. I left without being seen, my appetite gone and my heart breaking. That evening, I received a group text that included the entire extended family. My mother had written a lengthy message claiming I had taken advantage of my grandfather, suggesting I had isolated him from the family during his final months, and stating they were pursuing legal action to correct this injustice. The final line read, "We no longer trust you. Consider yourself no longer part of this family." My hands shaking, I simply replied, "Understood." That night was the longest of my life. I lay awake replaying every interaction with my grandfather, questioning whether I had somehow misunderstood his intentions or inadvertently influenced him. By morning, I knew two things with certainty: I had always acted with integrity, and my family was now actively working to paint me as a manipulator. The evidence of their campaign came quickly. My aunt called awkwardly, asking if the rumors were true. My cousin mentioned that Aaron had been telling people I had prevented the family from visiting grandfather in his final weeks, a complete fabrication. A longtime family friend texted asking why I would take advantage of an old man. The betrayal cut deeper when I discovered my mother had accessed my financial records. Her friend Linda worked at my bank and had pulled my account information, violating numerous privacy laws. They were building a case not just in the court of family opinion, but potentially for legal action. I contacted Martin Harlow immediately. He listened calmly to my concerns before opening a drawer and removing a sealed envelope. "Your grandfather anticipated this might happen," he said. "He asked me to give you this letter if the family reacted poorly to his decisions." The letter was 5 pages long, written in my grandfather's distinctive handwriting. He explained that he had been concerned about the family's financial habits for years and had documented their refusals to learn basic money management. He had offered financial education to everyone, set up appointments with advisors that were canceled, created college funds that my parents had withdrawn prematurely for vacations and home renovations. Most shocking was his revelation that he had recorded several conversations with my parents and siblings in the months before his death. In these recordings, they had discussed their plans for the expected inheritance, including purchases of luxury cars, vacation properties, and in Aaron's case, quitting his job to finally live the good life. "I am not punishing them by limiting their inheritances," my grandfather wrote. "I am protecting them from their own worst impulses, while rewarding the one person who demonstrated the values I hold dear." The final paragraph contained the bombshell. "If anyone contests this, will I have included a contest clause that will immediately revoke their entire inheritance." Martin has additional documentation demonstrating my sound mind and deliberate choices, including video recordings of our discussions about these decisions. Martin confirmed this was true. "Your grandfather was very thorough. He underwent additional medical evaluations, specifically to document his mental capacity. He anticipated every argument they might make." Armed with this knowledge, I waited. The next day, my phone remained silent. The day after, the same. Then, exactly 48 hours after I had responded, understood to my mother's disowning text, my phone rang with an unknown number. "This is Samuel Weiss, representing the Collins family," said a nervous voice. "I wonder if we might discuss your grandfather's estate." "You are my family's attorney," I clarified. "Yes. I have been retained to explore options regarding the will. However, I have just become aware of some complications. The contest clause. They had finally discovered it." "I am listening," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "It seems there may have been a misunderstanding. My clients were unaware of certain provisions in the will. I believe it would be beneficial for all parties to discuss a potential resolution without formal legal challenges." Translation. They had realized challenging the will would leave them with nothing, and now they wanted to negotiate. "What resolution did you have in mind?" I asked. "Perhaps a more equitable distribution. One that honors your grandfather's intentions while addressing family concerns." His intentions were made extremely clear in the will, and in his personal letter to me, I responded. I have recordings of my family members discussing plans to spend their expected inheritances irresponsibly, exactly as my grandfather feared. The silence on the other end lasted nearly 10 seconds. I see, he finally said. Perhaps I should consult further with my clients. Within an hour, my phone was flooded with messages. My mother called 6 times in succession. My father sent a text asking if we could talk this through like adults. Aaron and Sophie both sent lengthy apologies, claiming they had been emotional and misunderstood the situation. I agreed to one family meeting on neutral ground at Martin's office. When I arrived, they were already seated in the conference room looking subdued. Mother Jenna had been crying, her makeup slightly smeared. Aaron could not stop fidgeting. Sophie kept her eyes on the table. I think there has been a terrible misunderstanding, my mother began immediately. We were upset and said things we did not mean. It was not a misunderstanding, I replied calmly. You disowned me. You accessed my private financial records illegally. You spread lies about me to our extended family. You planned to contest the will despite knowing that was against grandfather's wishes. No one spoke for several moments. We made a mistake, my father finally said. We were shocked by the will and reacted poorly. I placed my grandfather's letter on the table, along with a USB drive containing the recordings. Grandfather anticipated everything that has happened. He knew you would react this way because he had seen this pattern throughout his life. He did not trust you with larger sums because of your demonstrated financial behavior. So, what now? Aaron asked quietly. You get everything, and we get nothing. That is not what I said, I replied. I am here to offer terms that respect grandfather's wishes while providing support for the family. I outlined my proposal. Their original inheritances would remain intact. Additionally, I would establish a family trust that could provide financial support for legitimate needs, like education, medical emergencies, and retirement planning. The condition was mandatory financial counseling for anyone accessing these funds and complete transparency about how money would be used. You want to control us, my mother said, but the accusation lacked her usual fire. No, I want to honor grandfather's wishes while still supporting my family. These are my terms. You can accept them, or you can pursue legal action and trigger the contest clause. The choice is yours. After 2 hours of discussion, tears, and occasional accusations, they accepted my terms. Not happily, not gratefully, but with the recognition that they had no better options. As we prepared to leave, my mother approached me privately. You really had no idea about the will before he died, she asked, searching my face. None, I answered honestly. But I am not surprised by his reasoning. She nodded slowly. I just do not understand why he did not trust us. I looked at her directly. I think deep down you do. 6 months passed, bringing gradual changes to our family dynamics. The process was neither quick nor easy, but small shifts began to appear like early spring buds after a harsh winter. My mother Jenna initially approached the financial counseling sessions with reluctance and suspicion. The first meeting included multiple accusations that the advisor was judging her spending habits. By the 4th session, however, she brought in her credit card statements voluntarily and asked for help creating a realistic budget. I never realized we spent $600 a month on takeout, she admitted during a family dinner 3 months after our confrontation. Or that our minimum credit card payments were mostly interest. My father found unexpected satisfaction in tracking expenses and seeing debt balances decrease. He called me one evening, his voice carrying an unfamiliar excitement, as he described paying off a credit card for the first time in 20 years. Sophie remained the most resistant, continuing to post about luxury purchases on social media while complaining privately about the humiliation of financial counseling. Yet even she eventually found value in the process, particularly when the advisor helped her start a small side business leveraging her social media skills. Aaron surprised everyone by embracing the changes most wholeheartedly. After initial resentment, he enrolled in certification courses to become a project manager, finding stable employment with growth potential. When he needed a reliable used car for his new commute, he approached the process through the trust fund, exactly as intended, researching options and making a practical choice. For my part, I established the trust, with clear guidelines just as my grandfather had done. I also began processing my own emotional journey through weekly therapy sessions, working through the pain of betrayal and learning to establish healthier boundaries. The trust fund worked as designed. When Sophie needed dental surgery not covered by insurance, the fund covered it without drama. When my parents faced an unexpected home repair, the process was straightforward. The family learned that support was available, but with structure and purpose rather than impulsive cash handouts. Perhaps most meaningful was establishing a foundation in my grandfather's name, focused on financial literacy for young people. The foundation offered scholarships and community workshops, extending his legacy beyond our family. I invited my family to participate, and to my surprise, Aaron volunteered regularly, showing genuine enthusiasm for teaching budgeting skills to high school students. Thanksgiving arrived again 1 year after my grandfather's passing. We gathered at my parents' home, the atmosphere noticeably different from the previous year. The tension had not completely dissipated, but conversation flowed more naturally. My mother still occasionally made passive-aggressive comments about trust fund rules, but they lacked the venom of months past. After dinner, I found myself on the back porch with my father echoing our conversation from a year before. The night was cool, stars visible above the suburban lights. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said quietly. "Not just of what you did with the money, but how you handled all of this." He gestured vaguely toward the house, encompassing the family drama of the past year. "I hope so," I replied. "I just tried to do what I thought he would want." "You did better than that," my father said. "You found a way to honor his wishes, while still keeping the family together. That was never easy with your mother." He chuckled softly, the sound carrying both affection and exasperation. Inside, I could hear my mother and Sophie laughing about something in the kitchen. Aaron was explaining his latest work project to my aunt. The scene was ordinary in the best possible way, the kind of family moment I had feared was lost forever after that text message. The journey taught me that family bonds are both more fragile and more resilient than I had ever realized. They can shatter under the weight of greed and misunderstanding, yet somehow find new forms when built on honesty and clear boundaries. The inheritance that my family initially saw as dividing us ultimately became the catalyst for necessary change. My grandfather's true gift was never the money. It was the courage to uphold principles even when doing so is painful, to offer support without enabling harmful patterns, and to recognize that sometimes the most caring action is refusing to participate in dysfunction. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure for something you believed was right? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family tales. And if you know someone struggling with similar family dynamics, sharing this might help them feel less alone in their journey. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most important family we create is the one built on mutual respect, rather than just shared DNA.